Hello.
Jessica,
Yes,
how are you?
I'm doing so well. How are you?
I'm good. Is this your first year? I can't.
Second year.
Okay. I thought I had lost a year there.
That's okay.
At least you had one normal year, right?
Ish until March.
Oh, yeah, right.
But
Yeah.
it's been okay. It's been okay.
And where are you?
I'm in Spotsylvania County.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. Tell me the grade again. Fifth?
First.
First. Jeez. I can't keep up with everybody.
That's okay. You have a lot of students.
I know I have almost 50 in these two sections, but I've combined them for seminar
Okay.
so that I don't have to do it twice for everybody.
Are they really nervous to come into teaching in this landscape?
They're student teaching right now, so they're seeing it. I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think they're nervous about the classroom management piece, because they haven't been able to see what it looks like to set up the routine in the beginning of the year.
Right.
And it's so different online.
It is, yeah.
So are you teaching at all at your school, or you
I
just?
am. We're hybrid now, so I am teaching in person.
Okay.
I've left up my virtual classroom because I assume we'll go back to virtual at some point, hopefully. I don't know, I'm getting a little nervous about hybrid teaching, but
Yeah. So
it is what it is.
how many days a week are you there?
4 days a week.
You're there 4 days, and then is the other day like your planning day?
The deep cleaning day, even though we don't see too much deep cleaning.
Really?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I haven't taught at all on campus this semester. It's been all virtual, but I had to request permission to do so back in the summer.
Okay.
And only some of us were allowed that. I don't know why I have the waiting room. Let me see if I wonder if I can change that. Because that's a pain. I have to let everybody in. So there'll be a whole bunch of people asking me to, I don't see a way to change that. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I don't think I can change it once it's started. Oh well. Just one more thing to deal with.
Once more than one person starts flooding in, you can just click admit all.
So good.
That's a little
bit
easier.
Katie.
I've been teaching from home this past week because I haven't been feeling well. So I've gotten used to admitting like 18 kids at once.
Yeah, they advised us not to have the waiting room. First they said have it, then they said don't have it. But then the problem is when you do have it, it's like too many. So there's Rihanna. So I got her in. So Jessica's here. So far, she's one of our panelists, and this is her second year teaching fifth grade in Spotsylvania.
First grade.
First grade, sorry. I know you told me that already. I'm sorry, I'm gonna shut my blind behind me, even though it's getting dark. I don't want it to be reflecting weird. Probably makes no difference, but. So I was supposed to get COVID tested today at JMU, and I spent 40 minutes in traffic and turned around and came home. Even though I had an appointment 3 weeks ago for today, and I knew it would be a busy day, everybody wanting to get tested before going home, but I did not anticipate that much traffic because we all had appointments. Hi, Rihanna.
Hello.
There's Madison. How are you?
Good. How are you? How are you, Katie?
Good.
Good. Yeah, when I started feeling not that great last week, my cooperating teacher asked me to go get COVID tested. So on Friday, I went and got tested, and then I've just spent the entire weekend just sitting at home like this, just waiting for my results.
Oh, you don't have them yet. Yeah.
I got them back yesterday morning at 6 a.m.
Oh, okay. So that
So
didn't take too long.
not too bad.
So you're negative.
I am negative, yes. I
Yeah.
just have a yucky cold. I'm like mostly over it.
So can you go back?
Yes, now that like my symptoms have gone away, I just have a cough, but that always sticks around. So the nurse was just like, as long as your cough doesn't get any worse and you don't have a fever, you can come back on Thursday. So
Yeah.
yay.
Awesome.
It just sucks because we started the hybrid model this week, and that meant that my teacher had to start it without me. And I was
Wait, are
like,
you in Rockingham?
Mhm.
Oh, me too. Where are you
So-
at?
I'm at McAkeesville.
Oh, gotcha. I'm the only student teacher or practicum student in my whole school.
What school?
I'm at Mountain View,
Oh yeah.
and a lot of teachers
Oh, that
signed
must be
up,
like
and
weird not having
everyone
anybody
bailed
else.
except my CT.
Really?
Yep, they like a ton of them signed up, and a lady today even asked me. She was like, "Oh, are you a student teacher?" Yeah, I declined mine at the last minute, and I was like, "Why would you
Well,
tell
a
me
lot
that?"
of them were so stressed out they didn't know how they were going to deal with teaching virtually by them, and they just thought taking a student teacher was one more stress in this
Oh,
virtual
absolutely.
world. They didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah, and then the lady right after that, she was like, "Now I'm regretting it because I could have totally used the extra help."
Yeah, I think people probably are regretting because I've heard from a lot of you that it's been working pretty well.
It's so different. I'm like, if I were a first year teacher, I have no clue how I would have managed this. Like, so serious.
Jessica, do you have any new teachers at your school?
We do. We have one new teacher. And honestly, the new teachers, like the younger group of us, have been actually doing much better than the older generation of teachers.
Yeah.
Because one, we're so used to the technology already. Like it was just so breezy to like start making lessons online for us. Whereas the older teachers were like, oh my gosh, I haven't like used Google Slides. I haven't done any of this. I don't know how to do it. So it takes them like 10 times longer to create their lessons and lesson plans than it does for us younger teachers.
Yeah.
So you'd surprise yourself. You really would.
Yeah, the technology gap there's Louise.
My cooperating teacher is the oldest teacher out of the entire like third and fourth grade. Like she is 54, I believe, and then all the rest of the teachers are between third year and sixth year teachers. So they've just been like helping her out so much with this stuff.
For sure.
Aw. It's so funny. My CTs, I'm pretty sure she's the oldest of the third and fourth grade team, and they jokingly call her grandma. She is 40.
She's 40?
She's 40.
That's it.
And they're like, they call her Gigi as a joke. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's terrible.
It's probably going to take a while for everybody. Everyone's slowly logging in. Where's Louise? Louise, where are you?
Can you see me?
Yes.
Hey,
It's so good to see you.
you too. How's it going?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Seems like ages ago that I saw you in person last.
I know. I was trying to think about it because what year did you come up here to Mason Crest?
Oh my gosh. 13 maybe?
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before this, I was like, oh my gosh, now I feel like I've been teaching forever.
I think you're our senior teacher tonight on
Which
this
is
panel.
crazy to think about because I do not feel it at all.
But we won't call you grandma.
I know, right?
Someone else just was saying that they call their teacher Rihanna. Was that Rihanna or someone else? Anyway, we're all just chatting away, waiting for everybody to get
Love it.
together.
It's nice to like actually have people come on the screen and like turn their cameras on instead of just talking to nothing all day long.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah, it's good to see faces.
I love seeing faces. I love our groups of 3 or 2.
Yeah, then you can really like feel like you're connecting with somebody, which is good.
Yes.
How are you adapting to teaching everything online?
I don't know. You should ask these girls. Maybe they probably won't want to say while I'm online, but
Let's have the truth come out.
this class has all been asynchronous, except for these seminars.
Okay.
And we'll only have 4 total. This is the 3rd one.
Okay.
And I'm guessing this might be the most popular one because they get to hear from experts out there that are doing it. And so I don't know, girls, what do you think? Has it been good?
Yes, you're doing great.
Of course, wouldn't think anything less.
This is just 2 credits though. So, you know, it's not that bad. And I noticed, wait, I'll admit all these people. I noticed that I'm going to have a bunch of you all in the spring for creativity. So that'll be fun.
That's my favorite class, minus going to Italy with you. I mean, that was the best.
It's hard to beat that, no doubt. I haven't been back since.
No.
So there's Katie. I've been looking right at you, Katie, and I'm like, who is that student?
Hey.
So we're just waiting on is Morgan here yet? I saw that she was somewhere. I keep admitting all these. There she is. She's coming.
So weird. For my district, we use Google Meets. I'm never really on Zoom. So this is, yeah.
Yeah, we use Blackboard, but the other day I hosted a training on Zoom and I like wanted to do something and I was like, have no idea which button I need to click for this.
Yeah, you get really comfortable in your one little piece of technology, and sometimes it's challenging when you veer away.
This is nice that you can have everyone up though. In Blackboard, it's only like 5 people at a time.
Well, we can't really have everybody. I mean, I don't know how it's working for you all, but so far I have 2 screens of about, let's see, what is the grid here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 5. So I have 25 students on a grid, and then I have to hit the arrows left or right to see the rest of everybody. So, but I think we'll probably be good with two screens. I mean, I don't have my dual monitors right now. Hi, Morgan. Morgan's screen says Justin. So if you are looking,
I'm on my husband's computer and I can't figure it out. The place that it normally is in for me is not there. So I'm working on it.
Okay. So we're gonna get started, and I'm going to briefly mention who everybody is and who's on with us. So we have Morgan signed in as Justin, and Morgan is down in Roanoke.
Yes, Roanoke City.
And tell us what grade.
I'm teaching pre-K this year, and I've been in kindergarten for 4 years and first grade for 3.
And the unique tidbit about Morgan is that she taught Aaron Morgan's daughter last year, right?
There you are. Hi.
Aaron in our class. So that's kind of a cool connection.
2 years actually, Holly. She taught
that's right.
kindergarten and first grade.
Yes. And we have Katie. Wave to us, Katie. Katie, this is Katie's 2nd year, right?
Yep, this is only my 2nd year.
And she's going to talk to us about tips and tricks and surviving your first year, because it was
fresh in my mind.
Very fresh in her mind. And you're in Maryland now, right?
Yep, I'm in Baltimore County and I'm in 5th grade.
5th grade. Were you in 5th last year?
Yep, I was in 5th grade last year too.
Okay. And then we have, I'm just bouncing around here. We have Jessica, who's also in her 2nd year, Spotsylvania, 1st grade.
Yep. Started in kindergarten and then looped up with my babies to 1st grade.
Nice, nice. And then Louise. who I'm so pleased to see because it's been a long time. And I don't know if some of you might have already heard this, but we got to travel together to do a study abroad in Italy back when I didn't have so much gray hair. And so it's great to see you, Louise.
Great to see you. And I'm up in Fairfax County. I taught second grade for 3 years, kindergarten for 4 years, and now I'm in my second year of fifth grade. So I've kind of had the whole.
Yeah, that's a big jump.
Yeah, kindergarten to fifth is fun. But actually the most exciting thing is this year, my fifth graders were my first kindergarten class. So I had them as kindergartners and now I have them as fifth graders, which is, I have about 9 of them again that I had as well in class. So
that's so cool.
Pretty great experience. Yeah.
So we're going to jump right in. We looked at the Google form and a number of people shared some ideas and questions, and I shared those with the folks tonight. And I just sort of let them choose kind of what topics they wanted to talk about. So Jessica's going to lead us off, and then for each different question, a different person will take the lead. But everybody, all the folks on the panel, feel free to chime in. I think while we're doing that, the rest of us should probably mute just for feedback reasons. And oops, I have more people to let in. And we'll get started with Jessica. So that first question, Jessica, was
classroom management, right?
Yeah, classroom management in a hybrid model and maybe examples of how you manage it in both.
Awesome. So we started our hybrid model on October 12th. So we've kind of lived it for about a month now. And I've definitely learned a lot living it this last month. So the most interesting thing I think about this year going into hybrid is that the kids want to be at school. They're so excited to be there. They went through the virtual thing and they were just craving those connections. So honestly, behavior management is so much easier this year than it was my previous year because they are so willing to do whatever it takes to stay at school. So that's been really, really cool. The number one thing that I do to start off the year is I start by asking my students, what are your hopes and dreams for this year? Let's discuss what you want to learn. Let's do some goal setting. And I did this even with kindergartners. You can do it with any age level. Now with kindergartners, they'll be like, oh, I want to learn how to ride my dirt bike better. And you kind of have to redirect them. Okay, well, let's think like, what are some school related goals we can figure out? So we spent about a week planning out our hopes and our dreams. And then we can really start to dive into what our rules look like. So for example, if a student says, I would really like to learn how to read chapter books this year, we post their hope and dream somewhere in a prominent place in the classroom. And then we go to talk about our rules. And so we're like, well, if we want to learn how to read chapter books this year, what are some rules we need to be able to attain that goal? Oh, you need to be listening to the teacher as I speak. That's a great rule. And then we'll write that down as a class. And you spend another week kind of developing your rules, tweaking your rules to make them look more generalized so that all of the class feels like they can follow them. And that really went into kind of with this hybrid model and staying safe. So along with our hopes and dreams, we also talked about our fears a lot this year. And I let the students guide that. I didn't want to make them scared of anything. So I was like, what are you nervous about this year? And a lot of students did bring up, I'm nervous that I'm going to get the coronavirus, or I'm nervous that my parents are going to get the coronavirus. And so we're like, okay, well, that is a really real fear. And we can talk about it. We can talk about germs and we can talk about how to stop germs. And then we can apply those to our rules that we create as a class. So really just being intentional of what the students want and the students need, and then bringing them into your rule setting. And then once you have your rules, just using reinforcing language all the time. So for example, I have one little kiddo, his mask loves to slip below his nose all day long. And instead of me yelling like, pull your mask up all day, I'm really just reinforcing why we pull up our mask. I'll say, student, hide your nose. We hide our nose because germs go in and out of our nose all day long. And I want to keep you safe, and I want to keep all the other kids safe in the school. So we're going to keep our mask above our nose. So it doesn't feel like I'm just an adult enforcing my power on him. We are doing this together as a team to make sure that we all stay safe. And then also just be really direct with your language. Sometimes you'll see teachers like yelling at their kids like, you guys keep talking, you're wasting all your recess time, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. And sometimes in the heat of the moment it happens, but I would really recommend take a step back, breathe, and then just be direct. Say stop or freeze, be quiet so we can go outside. And that is much more powerful than reaming out your students and saying a long slew of words that they listen to 10 seconds of and then they forget about the rest. So just being really, really intentional and direct with everything you say. Something else that I'm doing this year is I tried to create a safe, calm corner. So last year I had a calm corner in my classroom and I had all the toys and the fidgets, which I can't have this year. So instead, I gave each student a pipe cleaner or fuzzy stick, and that lives in their desk, and they can use it at any time that they feel they need it. And then we also set up something called a refill station. So it's just a chair. It's not glamorous because it had to be a hard surface that I could clean off. So it's a chair in the corner, but it's not a timeout chair. We call it a refill station. So if a student is feeling a little bit overwhelmed or their emotions are getting really big, they can go to the refill station, they can set a timer, and then it's still a safe place where I can wipe it down after they use it. So it looks a little bit different this year, and it's not quite as inviting, but they still have that space to regulate their emotions. And then let me just think, I still do a PBIS system in my classroom this year, but instead of giving out like tickets to students, I do a stamp reward system. So I have a TENS frame on all of their desks, and then I can just stamp the TENS frame when they're doing a behavior that I think is positive. So it never comes in contact with each other, but it still shows them that I notice your behavior, I think you're doing a great job. And then when they fill out their TENS frame, I give them either a $1 book that I get from Scholastic, or I give them just like a little toy. And then of course, when I give them those, you put your gloves on and then you hand it out. So just really being careful about what you're doing and what you're giving them and being safe, but also you're still allowed to do all the fun things that you would in a normal year. So those are a big slew of tips that I've done. Does anybody else have anything they want to share from their experiences of classroom management in a hybrid setting?
I'm just going to add on a little bit. There's what I always feel, I guess, in my 10 years of craziness, less is more. Do what works for you, because there are so many cool ideas out there. There's so many like cute things that you can find, and this that you can do, and this that you can put up. You have to do what you're going to keep up with, that's going to be consistent, and that you can continue reinforcing for students over and over and over again. And otherwise, they're going to be unsure. They're going to be unclear. They're not going to know what it is. If you can't keep track of it, there's no way that a 5, 7, or 10-year-old can keep track of it. So I always say less is more. Many of your schools that you go into will already have some kind of behavior plan or program that they kind of want you to follow, the rules of the school, the regulations of the school. That's to create that whole culture, right? And then within your classroom, you're going to create your own climate. So you're going to add your own twist on things within your classroom. So making sure that you are understanding of what is it that we do as a school-wide system, and then how can I tailor that to fit me and my teaching style? Because no matter if your school is following this school-wide system, you are still going to have your own teaching techniques. You're going to still have the thing that works for you. So go off of that. One thing that I've used significantly, and we did pick up on as school-wide, is 1, 2, 3 Magic, which is a very simple program. If it is something that you want to look into prior to beginning any student teaching or kind of going in there to kind of practice it. The reason why it's successful is it, just like Jessica said, it's taking the conversation out of it. When a child is upset, when we are upset, we're not hearing. They're not hearing. Just because they're upset about something doesn't mean it's wrong. Sure, we all get upset, we all get angry. We've got to teach them how to deal with those emotions. And that's key. They are learning from you the whole time. They're learning, they're watching, they're seeing when you get frustrated. And it's important to show them those times. It's important to show them those times you're upset, because we're all human, and it all happens. And what I've been noticing with the upper grade students significantly in this switch to virtual is the need for that social emotional support. They just want to know that you are there, you are someone that they can talk to, they care about you. And there's going to be times, and it is okay, you could beat yourself up like, oh, I didn't finish a lesson. I didn't finish one of my lessons today because we kept on going off. But what was important was they felt that they were being heard. They felt that they had someone that they could confide in and talk to. And when you have that relationship with them, they don't want to let you down. So when it comes then to the really hard conversations, when they've done something which they really shouldn't have done, they're more upset that they've let you down than they are about what they did. They're like, oh my goodness, they know, oh my goodness, I'm so upset. I need to correct it. I need to do something better, because they are feeling that remorse, right? And it's important to show that, build that connection. That those first 6-8 weeks of school, you're building a relationship with them. You're getting to know what they like, what they don't like, and you're tailoring everything that you do for them. They are your why, right? And that's what we always come back to. What is your, why are we here? Why are we here today? Why are we at school? And they're our why. So we want to tailor everything to that. So I always say less is more. Set up clear goals with them. They should know what they're working toward. They should know what their goal is in every area. You're celebrating that success and you're building those relationships with them.
Yeah, I'm also going to add on to that, just because my first year, I struggled so badly with classroom management, and it was because I made it too complicated and I wasn't consistent. And that has changed so much this year from last year. Is you need to be consistent, especially if you have upper grades. I love teaching 5th grade, but if you aren't consistent, they will take advantage of that. So if you tell them, like, you're going to call their parents after they do this behavior 3 times, you have to make sure you call their parents, because if you don't, they're going to keep doing it. And then the class is going to run you and you will not have control over it. So the consistency is like the biggest takeaway I got from last year. So set up a very simple, I would say, classroom management system, and then stick to it. And if you're going to change it, I would wait a couple weeks so it becomes a routine for you and your class. And then if it's not working, go ahead and change it. But consistency is so important in every grade, but especially upper grades, because they're smart and they will take advantage of it, unfortunately. And that's just because they're 10-year-olds. They don't know how to like manage their emotions right, and they will do that. And then the relationship thing is so big too, because I'm 100% virtual right now. So like the first 10 minutes of every class we have, I just let them tell me stories and we get to talk as a class. And that has been awesome because they do feel heard and they feel comfortable with me. And the relationships that like we made this year, even virtual, have just been awesome by letting them tell me stories and just hearing them. So the consistency is something, and simple, keeping your classroom management simple, are like big takeaways I got from last year, because as a first year teacher, it was a struggle to try to figure that out.
Everyone said everything that I was thinking, so I have nothing to add.
Oh, Holly, we can't hear you. You're muted.
There's too many things. Do any of you all have questions specifically about classroom management before we go on to the next question? We good?
I have a question. Since we're talking about, or I guess, sorry, one of you is in a hybrid model, right? So that's in person and virtual.
Yes.
And I'm sure the principles stay the same for classroom management in terms of consistency, simplicity. But how do you balance that when you have some students who are in person, some students who are virtual? and you're being stretched in all these different directions?
I am in a very lucky situation where we have a extra teacher that teaches our virtual kids when they're virtual. And so I only have to worry about my hybrid kids. So I don't have an answer for that. But in the virtual setting, you kind of have to move quickly. So I assume that if you were doing hybrid and virtual at the same time, just keep a quick pace as you're going to make sure that your virtual kids are still engaged as you are in person with the hybrid students. I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of advice on that. But yeah, that would be my best advice, to try to keep them engaged as much as they can and still call them by name if they are on the computer. Don't like put up your computer and forget about them. Make sure you're still checking in with them constantly.
We have been exploring the concurrent model. So we are 15 kids will be in person in the classroom, and at the same time 15 will be virtual. So we'll be live streaming while we teach. And I did ask for a little bit of feedback, thinking that we would be having this discussion tonight. And some of the really big things are, we're not doing lecture style all the time, right? That's not how we teach elementary school students. So really thinking about how you're going to utilize your time and thinking about that small group instruction. Sure, 10-minute focus lesson, they might all be seeing, all having access to. We want them to make sure that they're all there participating. So a juggle, right? Because you've got your kids in front of you and you've got your concurrent kids. But then think about how you're going to structure the rest of your blocks. And this is something your teams will work with. I mean, it's constantly changing. We're not, fifth grade for us is not scheduled to go back until January right now, but we already have plans in action. Okay, so this group will be independently working on an asynchronous task while I'm meeting with one small in-person group. Then this in-person group will be working on a task within the classroom while I'm meeting with one of the virtual small groups. And so don't ever think that you're going to be totally by yourself trying to figure out this puzzle. We normally as teachers are having to juggle so much. Right now we're teaching in a crisis, right? Which is a very, very different experience, one that we haven't been trained for. And so it's kind of like we're building the train while we're on it, or flying the plane while we're building it at the same time, and things are going to fail. And I think that's something you have to give yourself grace for. And your first year teaching anyway, there's a lot of stuff you have to give yourself. You're going to have days which just didn't go very well, and you feel defeated and you feel like, what? And then there's going to have days that just lift you up. And that's the same in this world. They're just kind of different to what we've experienced before. And so really think about, well, how am I using my time? I am never going to be, even in my virtual world with my 28 kids, I'm rarely teaching all 28 at the same time. We've still got stations happening. We still got small groups happening. There's ways to be very creative, but that's when you've got to rely on your team teachers as well, and the things they've experienced and what have worked and what hasn't worked.
I would ask that in your interview too, because I know my principal provided a ton of support on how our schedule looks. So that would be a great thing to ask as you are learning about these different schools that you might potentially work at.
Yeah, I think also going back to just how to practically set up your hybrid model in the classroom. Obviously, you're going to have the experience of the teachers who are doing it currently this year. So they're going to have a lot of knowledge of what worked and what just didn't work at all. I know that any kind of center or small guided reading group rotations is probably going to be your best bet to start off with. Because you're already teaching the kids, okay, this is a time where the teacher is with this group and this group is working by themselves. And you can interrupt for emergencies, but right now I'm teaching these kids and you're learning these kids or you're learning these things and doing these things over here independently. So giving a lot of great structure to that small guided reading group time, that small guided math group time is going to pay dividends in a hybrid model.
Thanks, Morgan. There's a slight delay with you and you froze, but you're back with us now. Except now you're muted.
I will move to a better place for internet.
Okay. Okay. Since Morgan's going to move, I had her to lead the next question, but we'll bump to Cait. Would you be willing to go next with tips and tricks for new teachers? I don't know
Yes.
if you put that in, but I love that topic.
Yes, absolutely. So I wrote down a few things that I wish I had known going into my first year, and a little background knowledge. My first year last year, I was self-contained 5th grade, and I'm in Baltimore County. So I am from the area I'm teaching in is like a low income area. So there's a significant amount of behavior problems, which I knew going in, but of course nothing can really prepare you for your first year really until you experience it. And then I had all the special education children with no special ed background. So I was kind of swamped with a bunch of different things happening at once. So I had a really tough first year, but I will say this year is so much better for me. And I have totally found my love for teaching again. So I just wrote down a few things I learned from last year that have changed positively this year. So the first thing I said, and we already kind of covered this, is to keep it simple and consistent. The summer before I started my job, I was on Pinterest and the teacher Instagrams 24/7. And I not waste it, but I would say during that week before students come, I was so focused on getting my classroom decorated and all this stuff. And I didn't really focus on classroom management and my clear and consistent routines, which you need. So my advice to you guys going in that first week is to really make a simple classroom management plan that you can stick to for the entire year, and make sure that you have those consistent routines and consequences as well. I'm sure my school didn't have a whole school system behavior plan, so I had to come up with it on my own. But that first week, make sure that you know what your classroom management system is going to be and stick to it. Because that makes a huge difference in your classroom management. The second thing I said that was really important that I didn't really realize would be so difficult was building relationships. I thought that would be such a natural part of teaching for me. But like I said, my school is a little bit low income. My students as 5th graders, I just wasn't expecting that the relationship building was going to be hard. So now I know that you really have to make that a priority the first month or two of school. So what I do now is I start every morning with a 10 to 20 minute morning meeting. We have a greeting, a sharing, an activity, and then a reflection. And I just teach social and emotional stuff during that time, and I get to know them. So for example, Tuesdays, I do Think About It Tuesdays, and then we just talk about a random prompt. I'll ask them what's your favorite food? And they're so excited about that, even as 10-year-olds. So building relationships and getting to know your students is so important. So I would recommend starting your mornings with a 10 to 20 minute class meeting. The next thing is to ask for help and do not reinvent the wheel. So there were many times last year I went into my principal's office crying because I was so lost on what to do. And your first year is not the only year, but it's the year where you kind of get a free pass. You're allowed to make mistakes. And people want to help you as a first year teacher. So don't be afraid to ask for help because you are going to need it your first year. I had no idea what I was doing, despite even doing the 5th year, the grad year. I still went in just totally overwhelmed, and you just need help from your team, your principals, anyone that can help you. I would reach out and make sure you take advantage of that. Fourth thing was to keep a parent contact log and weekly communication. So this is another thing that I did not do my first year, but I'm doing this year. I have a binder with all my students and their parents' contact information, and I send weekly emails and newsletters. And the weekly newsletters don't even have to be anything that crazy. I just write if we have an event coming up and then what we're learning in each subject. And then when kids know that you talk to their parents, they're less likely to misbehave because they know their parents and you talk to them on a weekly basis. But also if you have those relationships with your students, they are less likely to misbehave in my experience because they don't want to let you down. The fifth thing that I realized is that make sure you're keeping your papers organized, but also, and keeping up with grading, but that you don't have to grade everything the kids turn in. So for 5th grade self-contained, I would walk out with like hundreds of papers, and I'm not exaggerating, and they would get lost. And I felt like I had to grade everything, but there were certain things that I recycled. I would look at 1 or 2 papers. I'm like, I don't need this. And I would recycle it for my mental sanity. And if it wasn't helping the kids, you don't need to grade it. The 6th thing I learned was to make sure you're familiar with your school's programs that they use. So there's a lot of different online platforms that your school's going to use. So for example, the learning management system they use, I know Baltimore County uses Schoology. We use things like Dreambox, First in Math and stuff like that. Those are great tools that your students can use in like easy independent work. If you like need a second and you need a breather, these online programs that your county provides, make sure you're familiar with them, because I was not my first year and didn't really utilize them. The 7th thing I had was to get to know your coworkers. My coworkers my first year were my saving grace. I went to the room constantly for help. They shared their resources with me, and they're still like my best friends. So making sure that you're friends with your coworkers and getting to know them will help make your experience, I think, better and more smooth. My 8th thing is to keep a personal life and keep it separate from work. So it's your first year, you are going to overwork. You're probably going to work weekends and stay late. That's just kind of the nature of your first year. You're learning and you're overwhelmed. But this year, I do not work weekends. I shut my computer at 4:05 and I don't open it for the rest of the night. I work out after work, or I hang out with my friends. And that has helped my mental health so much, because as much as I love teaching and I love my students, you have to make sure you have a life too. So that you're not just constantly thinking about it, because if your mental health is not good while you're teaching and you're sad and you're anxious the whole time, your students pick up on that energy so quickly. And you don't want to make your classroom a nervous, anxious place to be. You want to be happy when you're there. So I think in order to do that, you really need to try to separate your personal and work life as much as you can. But again, your first year, just show yourself some grace, because at least for me, I was so hard on myself. And that's one of my biggest regrets, because that made a whole cycle of not being able to separate my personal life from my work life. And it's really hard to do that. And if you aren't able to do that your first year, like, that is okay, because that's what I did. And it's okay to cry. So I cried, like, honestly, some days, 3 out of the 5 days of the week. I would come home on the couch and just cry. But this year, after I have learned all these, going through it has just made me a stronger teacher. So this year, I can honestly say I love teaching. I feel way more relaxed, which is weird because we're virtual and in a pandemic. But just knowing all these things has helped me so much be a better teacher this year. And then before I close all the things, I asked some of my teammates too, like if they had any advice of like their first year. And a few things they said is to make sure like you keep documents and you document things that happen, which is another big thing. So if you talk to a parent, I would write it down somewhere where you can keep it. Talk to parent on 11-19. This is what the conversation was about. Just in case if anything were to happen, you have documentation of it. I keep like a crate, like one of those file crates, and I have a file for each student, and I just put notes in, things like that. So like if there was like a concerning work thing they submitted and you think you need to bring it up, like keep that in their file so you have it, and keep any communication that you've had with their parents in that file, just so it's easy to access in case you ever need it. And then also make sure you're keeping up with like your pacing deadlines and your curriculum deadlines. Like we have to give tests by certain dates. So just make sure it's okay if you fall behind, but you're trying to keep up with it. And then you have and know your students' IEPs. So that was a lot, but I learned a lot my first year. So if anyone else wants to take it away.
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah.
Morgan, Louise, Jessica, do you have any tips to add?
That was so good. That was like everything that you need to know about your right then. The only thing I would add to is take your personal days. You get personal days. Your first year, you're like, I can't take off. Your kids will survive. I remember I had the flu. My principal came in, stuck a thermometer in my ear and was like, go home now. I am teaching your class for the rest of the day. Like, go home.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're not gonna, they survived. And from then on, I took my personal days.
Yep.
You need that too, and they will live.
Yeah. I will say I'm taking a personal day tomorrow to get my hair done. So I have learned the work-life balance.
I would even say, and I'll be 100% honest, I use my sick days as mental health days, and I don't feel guilty about it. My first year, I would have never, ever done that. But you need to do that because they're your sick days, and mental health is just as important as physical health. So don't feel guilty if you're overwhelmed and you need to take a day off, and use your sick days. Don't do a personal day for it.
I agree wholeheartedly. Excellent advice. Any other tips?
And if you take it and there's no subs, that's on your principal to find someone to cover your classroom. You've already submitted, so you don't need to worry. No one picked up my job. No. Someone will cover your classroom. They have to. So you can just take your day and turn off your email on that day.
Okay. Morgan, now that you're in a better place where we can see your dog on occasion, do you want to lead us in, let's see, I think the topic was parent volunteers in the classroom. The specific question was how much communication with parents is too much, but in general, we know COVID's a weird time and we don't really have parent volunteers. Just share a little bit about that, and anyone else too can chime in.
Yeah, so in the past for parent volunteers, I typically have just done it as a sign up. I don't like to have parent volunteers in the classroom every single day because that's every single day that I have to plan for children. I have to plan for any teacher assistants, and I have to plan for a parent volunteer. And honestly, it just becomes too much. So the extra help isn't necessarily helpful to me. And that's me specifically. Other teachers, they want them in there every single day. And that's just not me. So I typically would have them maybe volunteer once a week, or once a week, we would have a parent volunteer in there. And so as far as what parent volunteers can do, it really depends on what you need them for. It could be something where you want them there for, sorry, my dog is practicing how to chill out, so he might bark. It may be you want them interacting with students. So, doing any kind of assisting them during independent work, or helping them with some writing, or just reading to them. And then, you might also want parent volunteers to handle some clerical things like, oh, can you run these copies for me? Can you, cut this lamination out? I hate cutting laminations, so that's probably what I would ask parent volunteers to do. I know I'm kind of weird. Most people like cutting it and I hate doing it. So and that was my comfort level, or that is my comfort level, like once a week. So now, as far as this year, now that we're in COVID classrooms, it's different. So you won't have parents who are going to come in, obviously, to the classroom. So how can you get families still involved in their children's learning and their children's class? So it really just comes back to connections with families and having their trust. So first, obviously, we want to establish trust with our students, but we want to establish trust with our families as well. I always tell families at the beginning of the year, throughout the year, we are a team. You are their number one, and I am their number two. I am the biggest cheerleader for your kid. I will be an advocate for them and for your family, so that trust and respect is established between us. And then as far as how can we continue to engage families in the classroom when we don't have visitors coming in and parents are not able to come in. This year, I've handled it just through virtual experiences with families. So every Friday we have a dance party. It's kids and families are invited, family members are invited, brothers, sisters. Like there are lots of kids who, during our 100% virtual time, the brothers and sisters would be in the background when I was on Teams with the kids because they wanted to peek in. Oh, is it the dance party day? No, it's not the dance party day. It's we're learning the letter A today. So, you know, it creates this culture of like, we are the fun class and we are the awesome kids in our fun class. So creating events for families virtually. What we've done this year, every Friday at 3, we have a dance party. Mondays, we do muffins on Mondays. So every Monday morning, we eat breakfast together on Teams together. Some teachers, you know, and it's really about your preference. Some teachers have a super hard rule of no food and no drink in front of the computer when we're working. And me, I don't honestly care if the kid is hungry. They're going to learn better if they're fed. So I don't have a preference on that. Other events we've done, I've done also some kids only events where, I say kids only, but really their parents are there in the background where it's like, oh, we're going to do something special for our family members. Let's brainstorm what we can do together to do something nice for our families. And then it's a surprise that they go then and share with their parents or grown-ups at home. I've also done parent-only events where we've done tea time together or coffee with Miss McIlwee. I've kind of mailed out like packets of tea or instant coffee to families since I'm not able to drop off things at their houses. I can't do home visits, where I've said, hey, hop on Teams on Thursday at 4. We're going to eat coffee or going to drink coffee together and then talk about, anything that's really hard right now. Giving the parents a space and a platform to talk about their struggles right now has been really, really beneficial for my relationship with families this year. And it's also really great for just the support that I can then go to them if there's any problems with our students behavior-wise or anything like that. They know, look, I got your back. Like, I'm not here to get you in trouble or your child in trouble. I'm here to be their number 2, to be their advocate. So the parent-only events have been really, really great. And I would highly suggest doing those if you're in an all virtual or a hybrid, even a hybrid model. Attendance may be low for the first one, but you just keep calling, keep sending out messages, keep trying to connect. And a lot of times if you offer like a guest speaker, I know that's what I'm going to do for our next event. We have a mindfulness coach in Roanoke City, and I'm going to have her come on and just do some mindfulness practices with parents, with moms and dads and grownups who are taking care of our kids at home, because mental health is important for everybody. So, just giving some tips and strategies for what they can do at home to kind of keep themselves centered for their kids was something that another teacher in my school district did. So I'm going to incorporate that as well for our next parents only event. And just trying to find those parent only times. Sometimes some families are better in the mornings. Obviously, some families are better in the evenings. I try to cut off what time I will get on Teams with families, though, because I have to have a life as well at home. So it's typically 4:30 is when I would not go past that time. So those are ways that I've stayed connected with families this 9 weeks. We were 100% virtual for the first 9 weeks. Now we're in a hybrid model. We still do Friday dance parties, every Friday. The time has shifted so that our virtual kids.
We lost your audio, Morgan. I'm not sure I don't know what happened, but we lost it. It's okay. It's all right. I think it's coming back.
Is it coming back?
Yes, it's back. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, so those are just some ideas that I have done this year that have been a little bit different than in the past.
Thank you. Anybody, Louise or Jessica or Katie, you want to add to what Morgan shared?
Yeah, I will say that my communication did adjust a little with the virtual world. I would never have given my cell phone number out prior to the virtual world. My students have it now, and I will text them at 9:15 if they're not in class and say, "Where are you?" And then they're like, "Oh man, I just woke up." The reason, though, again, it's the relationship that you've built with the family and the child. Be very mindful. Some families are working multiple jobs. Some families are speaking other languages and they don't speak English. That doesn't mean that they don't want to be a part of their child's life and they don't value their child and their child's education. So there are lots of resources out there to help you communicate with families who speak other languages and don't speak English. Use them. They're there to help you and to be there. They'll translate things if you want to send them home. They'll make phone calls for you, positive and negative, right? You want to have, everyone should get a positive phone call within those first 10 days of school. That's so important, right? Otherwise, on that 11th day when little Johnny gets in a fight and you're having to call, they don't want that to be your first phone call from you. And so, yeah, now I will say it's changed. I get texts from families. A child couldn't get on today, so she FaceTimed me. So she was FaceTiming in the lesson while the others were online, right? So it's changed. Keeping those boundaries again. You do not have to respond to anything right away. Respond within 24 hours. You might get an email from a family. You might really want to respond right then. Don't. Take a breath. Breathe, go read it to somebody else, think about it, type your response, don't hit send, read it to somebody else, then go, right? Like nothing has to be immediate, and give yourselves that. But also be very mindful, and I especially think in our COVID time, right? We don't know what these families are juggling. Some might have all supports that they need, some might not, some might be struggling with illness or loss. I will say that I had a student last semester who was coming in late all the time and was trying to keep up with his work and he couldn't. And then he let me know that his father had passed away from COVID, but he was still wanting to be at school. But if I hadn't really tried, if I hadn't had that relationship with him, I might never have known that. And so just again, like less is more, start small, take your time. You're not an emergency ER doctor. They don't need you that second. It is okay. Breathe, and just you're human as well. And so make those positive phone calls, as many as you can, because when you have to make that hard phone call, the parent's going to listen to you and the parent's going to hear you.
Yeah, just going off that too, like if you do have to have a negative phone call, which you probably will, always like start or end with the positive, like that sandwich method. So I always say like, I know that he or she like is not reaching his full potential, and I really want him to, because I see him doing this that's so well. And then you bring up the negative and then you end with a positive. I feel like you guys might already know that, but like that's so important, because I try to show parents as much grace as I can, because like no parent wants to do bad by their children or wants to get a negative phone call about their child. So keep that in mind. Like they don't want their child to misbehave in class, and so just give them grace too, just like you would want them to give you grace if you were to mess up in the classroom as well. So showing them grace, and then always starting and ending with the positive when you have to make those negative phone calls.
And this is just a really small suggestion, but in all of your communication, like your emails or your newsletters, always address it dear families rather than dear parents, because a lot of my students don't live with their parents. They might live with a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle. So that's just something to be really mindful of when you're addressing those emails or communication.
Yeah, and going back to the negative phone calls, I tried to, when I call, I try to come at it from an information gathering perspective. So instead of immediately saying, well, you know, so-and-so wasn't, you know, behaving well today, I would ask, hey, has so-and-so been feeling okay at home? Have they been sad at home? Have they been upset or angry? Have you noticed any of these kinds of behaviors? Because, you know, just saying the report to the family member about what the behavior was kind of comes at it from a blaming, like a blaming kind of way, like, hey, I'm calling to tell you that your child did this, rather than saying, hey, let's work together and figure out what we can do to make this better, so that they can reach their goals in the classroom.
Great points. Any questions for them before we move on to the next topic? What is the next topic, ladies? Louise.
I had a really quick question.
Okay, who's that?
Me,
Oh,
Rihanna,
okay.
sorry. Was it hard at the beginning to like establish those boundaries with families or parents, or like, I don't know, just in general? Because I feel like I would be the one that'd be emailing people all night.
Yeah, I still find it hard, to be honest. One of my parents last year is actually on the Fairfax County School Board. She's actually the head of it. And I was like, as soon as she emailed me, I was like, oh my God, I have to write back right away. Oh my God, this is awful. It takes, and it's different, I will say, different families, different situations. And that's why I always read it and then ask myself, is this a real emergency where they need to know something immediately? If the answer is yes, then okay, I might think about crafting a response now. If not, I'll put it off. My other piece of advice is, if a parent sends you an email, and if it is one that is like, okay, I feel like I do really need to talk about it now, pick up the phone. Emails can be misconstrued in a lot of ways. No matter what emotion you're in, you could read it in a different way, different tone. So pick up the phone, and the first thing is just say, like, hey, I was just calling about the email that you sent, and I'd just love to hear more about it. Giving them the chance to kind of, sometimes they need a sounding board. They're letting something out. It might not be you. It might be that they're seeing the same things at home and they're so frustrated they don't know what to do either. And they finally have a release because someone else has that same connection. So oftentimes I might even say, hi, I got your email. I'm going to be calling you tomorrow to discuss this further, because then it's like I've acknowledged it to them so they feel heard, but it also gives me a little bit of time to like think about where I'm going to go with my response, if I need to ask anyone else to be a part of the conversation with me. And then also it allows us to have the phone conversation. I feel like when you have a phone conversation, there's sometimes this weight that's lifted from everyone. You might have even read an email and been like, and really it was nothing. And so that would kind of be my advice. If you feel like you really have to, then say, hi, I heard your email. Thank you for sending this. I appreciate it so much. I'm going to get back to you tomorrow. And it just gives you some time to kind of go over everything.
Something I eventually had to do was I had to take my email off of my phone because I was checking it constantly. Like, I was obsessed with checking my freaking email. But eventually, like, I put it back on now that we're in this weird landscape. But in my first year, don't be afraid to take it off your phone, because you know what? It'll wait till tomorrow when you check on your computer. It's fine.
Those two pieces of information resonate with me so much, even like in my personal life, right? Because you can misconstrue text messages and emails so easily. And I think we sometimes hide behind the ability to email when what we really need to do is pick up the phone. So great advice, great advice. I'm going to save the question that Jessica was going to lead us on for survival tips for the first year for the end. Louise, can we go back to you and talk about working with children with special needs and how to support them? And
yeah. So, it's been my experience. I've worked with a varying amount of grade levels, varying amount of different students with all different needs. And I think the first thing you need to remember about anything is you're going to do what's best for each individual child. You're going to meet each child where they are and give them what they need to push them to reach their goals, no matter who they are, no matter if they have a learning disability, if they're an ESOL student, or if they're just a general education student. I think a lot of times we get caught up in labels. What is a label? It just automatically gives us something that makes us think that this child is this, that, or the other. But really think about, who is this child? What do they need? And how can I give them those best supports? And so part of the question was like identifying learning disabilities. Now, of course, we've all been around children a lot. We understand, we know that children do have learning disabilities, and we might be recognizing something. Remember, you're not a medical doctor. It's not up to you to give a medical diagnosis ever to a family or to a parent. And so, yes, we can have opinions, but again, forefront of our mind, what are we doing for this student right now to help them reach their goal? And so the first and most important thing is data. You can't argue with data. Data speaks volumes. So if you ever are suspecting that there is something going on where a student is struggling in a certain area, or there is a concern that you have, collect the data. Document all those supports that you are putting in place. You need to have evidence. Are they getting, if there's different tiered levels of supports, which ones have they been receiving? How long have they been receiving it? You need to make sure that all of this is documented. The reason for that is that evidence, that data is what talks, not our personal opinion, right? It's the data. We can show it here. They haven't made progress, X, Y, and Z. Along with that, as we always keep going back to, is relationships, parent communication. If you are suspecting anything with any student, you want to be communicating their progress with the parent. So I've been noticing that they've been doing really well in, but we're still having some areas with this, this, and this. I'm doing this, this, and this. We're working on this, this, and this. Being very clear, but never, ever using a diagnosis word. I do, so that a parent might say, do you think my child has ADHD? I'm not a medical doctor. If that's something that you have a concern about, have you checked in with your pediatrician? That would be my suggestion. We never want to make that assumption because that comes back on us. And again, that's not our area of expertise. So collecting our data, documenting all the supports we have in place, and communicating with parents. The next thing is you have experts in your building and you want to utilize them. No one, this is my 10th year, no one expects me to have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I need to use the people in my building who have expertise in certain areas. So if I have a student who I've been working with and I've been putting these supports in place, who am I going to go to first? The special education teacher on my team. I'm going to communicate this with them. The lead special education teacher in the building, communicate with them. My administration, communicate with them. But they're going to be looking for that documentation. What have you been doing? What things have you got in place? And where has it not quite been working? And what else could we do? Because there's a point where you say, I've done everything. I don't know what else to do, right? I need someone else to help me. Social workers, school psychologists, whoever it is, lean on somebody. Remember, someone said this earlier. It was either Cait or Jessica, or I don't even know who it was, but don't reinvent the wheel, right? They're gonna want to see that you've put behavior plans or specific accommodations in place. Don't think you have to make these from scratch. I guarantee you someone in your building has had a child who's had a similar behavior need or academic need, and there has been a plan created. Ask around, and then you can adapt and work with that. If it is found that a child is suspected of having a learning disability, or if a parent comes to you, know what the rules are. So if a parent says to you, I think my child might have a special education disability, you have 10 days. You need to get that to your lead special education teacher immediately. They have 10 days to create the meeting and get the parents in to have a conversation. So they have legal obligations. So that's what I'm saying, like, just let people know. And if you're not sure who to let know, just let everyone know. Someone will help you, right? Just make sure you've told somebody. It is a long process for a child who might have a disability to go through testing. It can be a very long process, and the parents have control. So that process could end at any time. They might not agree to their child going through testing. They might not agree once they've had testing for them to have an IEP put in place. So you, again, remember, keeping at the forefront of our mind, we're going to do what's best for each individual child, no matter what. Doesn't mean just because they don't have a special ed or an IEP, you're not going to do it for them, right? We care about them. We want them to be successful. You're going to do it anyway. Just document everything that you are doing, because that's what's going to get you the supports that you need. When a child does have an IEP of some form in your class, and depending on what grade level you're teaching, depends on what it might look like. So it could just be a general learning disability, right? Or developmental delay, because again, up until age 7, they're still only classified as developmental delay, unless they have a doctor's diagnosis. And so, depending on what they need, you need to make sure you know your child's IEPs. You know every person in your classroom who has an IEP. It's a legally binding document. So you just need to make sure you're really clear. At the beginning of every year, I sit down with my special education teacher. We have a binder. I think, Katie, you mentioned the binders. We have a binder. What are the goals? I mean, I'm very fortunate that I work with an extremely collaborative team in an extremely collaborative environment. And part of that is the special education teachers help us out. They give us snapshot IEPs. So it's kind of like a very concise, like what it is that we need to be doing. And we're working collectively to meet those goals. That's not the sole responsibility of the special education teacher, and it's not the sole responsibility of the general education teacher. It's a collective responsibility. So if you ever feel like you're not being supported in it, again, let someone know. You're going to have a mentor, your lead teacher, whoever it is, let people know. Your special education teacher is the person to go to with any kind of questions or concerns with any special education stuff, just because it is so legally binding. They have so many deadlines and dates and regulations to follow. That's their area of expertise. So I always say to my special education teacher, what do you need from me? Right? Like, what can I do to help you because you have this, that, and the other? There's many meetings you'll have to attend. I still joke, this lead special education teacher at my school is my best friend. And she joked the other day, she was like, I think this is the first teacher narrative in 10 years you've written without me. And I'm like, yeah, because I always do it with you because we have that collaboration, right? It's going to make a better document. I'm getting her area of expertise, her language, her knowledge to help me summarize what I'm seeing as the teacher who really knows the child for who they are. So just, you're never alone. And sometimes if a child doesn't have an IEP, and you maybe are teaching in more isolation by yourself, if you don't have necessarily a supportive team, it can be very, very overwhelming. And that's why it's important to know you are not expected to have all the answers. If you have a child that you're truly struggling with, ask someone for something. Because you don't have all the answers. None of us do, but we have experts in the building who can help and can support us. So yeah, I think that was my whole big spiel of IEP.
That was very passionate.
I have a lot of, I kind of get, my crew is always a very special crew that I have. And I think the thing to remember, and I think one of the hardest things that I find in education is a label. And when you say a child has a special need or has something, there's kind of a ceiling placed on them or limits placed on them. But that's not what it is. Every child has their own thing, their own bucket, their own needs. So how do we meet them where they are, and how do we make goals and where they need to go? Think of them as that. Don't think of them as like the special ed kids. No. Take that out. Throw that out the window.
I kind of wanted to piggyback off you too, just because going into my first year, like I really was not aware of how many special like how many kids with IEPs or whatever could be in your classroom as a gen ed teacher without any special ed background. And I had 8 IEPs in my classroom my first year. So like you probably will get students with IEPs in your classroom, and it's literally legally binding. You go to meetings, you sign a document. So once you sign that document, you have legally agreed to meet the needs that they have in their IEPs. So like I have this thing I want to show you guys because while you're speaking, I thought of it. It's like a stamp I bought. And when I work with my students in small groups with IEPs, I have their accommodations. Like you can order this off Etsy on there, and you check off what you gave them for that assignment. So I read to them, I was their scribe, I gave sentence starters. That's in their IEPs, that's documentation, and now you have it. So just like being aware of that, like most likely you're gonna have kids with IEPs in your classroom, and your first year teacher, you're not gonna know really what to do. Like they handed me these documents and I had snapshots too. And I had to read through it, and I gave myself a cheat sheet, like the big things that I can do and need to do in small group or what have you. And I worked with my special educator, like your students who do have IEPs will get pulled for their service hours. So you have to be aware of that too. Like they're going to miss 30 minutes of your instruction and then come back, and then you have to catch them up while keeping track of the rest of your students too. So just being able and aware that that's probably going to happen. You might not have 8, but you'll have 1 or 2 or 3 students with IEPs, and just making sure like you are following what their IEPs say, you're keeping documentation of it, and also that you're not just labeling them, like you're meeting them where they are and making your curriculum accessible to them. Because like, for example, as a 5th grade teacher, I don't know if you guys do F&P or Fountas and Pinnell. I had students at B's and K's, which is like kindergarten, 2nd grade. So you have to really be prepared that like you might have students that can't read in your classroom, and you have to be willing and able to give those accommodations, because not only do you want them to do well, but it's legally binding. So like that's so important, and something I was so unprepared for my first year of teaching. So just like everything you said, but yes, like explanation point, because it's so important.
Yeah. And you'll make mistakes. I've been there where I've like given a kid a test and then been like, oh man, they were supposed to get read aloud. Whoops.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, like it happens. We all make mistakes, but this is where the collaboration with your team is super important, right? Who's meeting with this kid when, who's pulling them when can I meet them for this, and when can I meet them with that? The thing is too, you are this child's advocate, and if you're a general education teacher in the general education setting. And remember, every student is guaranteed a viable curriculum, right, at their grade level. So they have to have access, unless they're in an intellectual disabilities class or a specific program. If they're in the general education setting, every student has access to the content of the grade level they're at. So if there's a focus lesson that is a 5th grade content on fractions, they have to have access to that. Then they can be pulled for a small group if they're still learning to count to 10, but they have to have access to that guaranteed and viable curriculum.
And don't get rid of your documentation at the end of the year. Don't think, oh, they're not my student anymore, let me just go ahead and shred these. No, keep everything, because you don't know if they'll need that to get more accommodations, or if they weren't eligible that year, they could use that data to then become eligible the next year. So keep everything.
Okay. Questions on that topic?
I have a question, or actually, Morgan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I feel like this is on topic for something I noticed in your classroom over the last couple years. So I'm wondering if you could speak to how you help like the rest of your students understand when maybe you're making special or different accommodations for a particular student, or different students kind of having different things going on. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit? Because I've seen that work really well, and I've seen like my daughter, for example, she just could explain why kids were doing this and that, and like she just got it. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So I think it's just part of the classroom culture that you just literally tell the kids everybody gets what they need in the classroom. When I talk about in the beginning of the year, like Miss McIlwee needs glasses, and who needs glasses in this classroom? So then the kids are like, oh, I have glasses, and then or it's like, oh, and I see my internet is unstable. I'm so sorry. I don't know why it's like that today, but it is. So I think setting up the expectation in the classroom culture that we all get what we need in our classroom. It might not be what you want, but it's what we need. And sometimes we get what we want. So, and Holly, give me a signal if my internet goes
I will.
poorly.
We can hear you. Your
here.
picture's frozen right now.
So I have had conversations with students about how you might see Miss McIlwee talking to some friends. Okay. What I'll do is I'll just take my video off and then just use my speaker. So, I've had just honest conversations with kids, like, you might see Miss McIlwee talking to someone, not anybody specific, but you might see Miss McIlwee working with some friends in a different space in the classroom or for a different time, or with different materials, because we all get what we need in the classroom. So, I think, Erin, what you were talking about, as far as, I think, making sure that the language that you use in the classroom is incredibly respectful of everyone and their needs. Like specifically, like when students have pull-out time, the question inevitably comes up by the other kids, well, why does that kid go? Why do they leave every day? I want to go with Miss So-and-so every day. And it's like, well, we all get what we need, and you don't need to go with Miss So-and-so right now. And it's kind of as simple as that. And the kids just end up understanding that and getting that, that we all deserve the love and respect from everybody in the classroom, and we all deserve to learn. So, and I also explained in the beginning of the year, oh, sorry, my dog is stuck in the blinds. So if you hear that, that's what he's doing. I explained to the kids, like, my number one job is to keep your heart happy and your body safe. My number two job is to teach you. And your only job in the classroom is to help me do my jobs. That's all you have to do. So you have to help me keep your body safe. You have to help me teach you, and you have to help me keep your heart happy. So setting that expectation up with them, they get it. Oh, I have to help Miss McIlwee teach me, and that means me doing something different than somebody else. Then that's what it means. So I hope that's helpful, Erin. I don't know if that is or not.
Yes, that's exactly what I was talking about. I just found it, I just really appreciated the language that you used, and I know that my daughter just really understood it all. So I appreciated that.
I would say there's a little transition too that happens. That's exactly how I set up my kindergarten and second grade classes, right? But as I taught upper grades more, I noticed a little bit on the other side. So in fifth grade, it's less of why do they get that as why do I have to have this? Why do I have to have a calculator when no one else does? Why do I have to go to this classroom when no one else does? I don't want to. I'm not doing it. I want to be like everyone else. That's when it's really important. Kids know when you're honest with them, and they know when you're not. And so it's communicating with the parents of how are we going to inform your child. Your child has a lot of questions. What do you want them to know? What do you not want them to know? And kids are inquisitive. They pick up on stuff they know. And so having those really honest conversations, look, You know, our math brains all work kind of differently, right? And yours might not. It needs this calculator because it's going to help it. And just like I need the glasses to help me, you need the calculator. And sometimes you have to be kind of firm because they will purposely not utilize their accommodations because they don't want to be different. And so it's explaining what an IEP is to them. I've had conversations like that. I've had many fifth graders sit in on their IEP meetings. This is look at all these people on your team. All of these people are here because we believe in you and we know that you need to be successful, and we know that it's hard for you. Some days are really hard for you. And these are the areas we're noticing are extra hard for you. And they're like, yeah, I can't do that. That's exactly what, yeah, that's, you know, and you finally, they kind of have an answer to this thing that they've been wondering that's not really been explained to them. And so having those honest conversations is really important, because we'll say, like, in the kindergarten age, it's like, yeah, I get to leave the classroom. Why don't I get to leave the classroom? This is awesome. They're playing this fun game. And in fifth grade, it's like, I don't want to be different. I'm not going. And that's when you can start seeing those behaviors. So understanding what the child needs, what the parents have shared with them, what they're comfortable sharing with them, and how you're going to just explain to them that we are all different. And this is what you need to help you. And that's okay. And just being there to hear them and hear their worries about it. And helping them, right? So sometimes they might want to be like, well, I'll do it, but like, can I do it later with a calculator with you? And it's like, yeah, we'll start with that. And then we'll slowly progress up to you using it more and more in class. But sometimes they have a hard time with that as well. So they don't want to be different. They want to be cool.
That's great perspectives from both ends of the developmental spectrum.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions before we move on to the last wrap up question of, I think we've sort of addressed some of these already, surviving your first year. I don't want to leave this topic if you all have questions. Okay. Jessica, you want to start us off with survival tips for your first year, and then we'll just bounce it around to whoever wants to add.
Absolutely. So I guess the number one thing is it's okay to have bad days. Everybody has bad days. Just be really reflective at the end of your day. Why was today so rough? What happened? Where were my emotions? What are things that I can do differently? And when you're able to be really reflective and take a look at it from a more direct lens, I think you'll find that you're able to target some of the things that trigger you, and you'll be able to have better days moving forward. And we've already kind of talked about this, but really seek help and advice. There are so many awesome colleagues that you're going to have the opportunity to work with, and they are going to be so willing to help you. So really take their advice, but don't just get their advice, apply it and show them that you've applied it. I have a mentor teacher, and she gives me awesome ideas all the time. And so I always like to go back to her. Hey, I tried this thing. This worked really well. This didn't really work. And then we can brainstorm off of each other. And she's really appreciative that I took the time to take her advice and actually apply it into my classroom. I also did that with my leadership team. You'll be on a probationary status for your first 3 years. So you are going to be observed a lot more often through your administrators. So if my administrator gave me a recommendation during one of their observations, I made sure their next observation, they saw me doing that recommendation. And then at my end of year review, that was something that my administrator brought up. She was so pleased that I was able to take her advice and then apply it. And that really spoke volumes of like her seeing me as an educator, because I'm constantly learning too. So that was one of my higher growth points as the year went on. Another thing to do as you survive your first year is find a hobby other than teaching. I used to tell my husband all the time, but teaching's my hobby. I love lesson planning. This is so fun. This is awesome. And I dug a hole for myself, because then I was teaching all the time. I wasn't turning it off. So work out, find something that you love, bake, do whatever it takes to turn your brain off of teaching for a second. Don't create the excuse that I did, that teaching was my hobby. And then my last little piece of advice is really try to block out time in your days. So I know that I made a schedule for myself that I tried to follow. So like Monday, I was lesson planning for the next week. Tuesday, I was going through all my data, grading any papers, that sort of thing, and making any resources that I would need for the next week. Wednesdays, I used that time for family engagement. So that was when I did my home visits, which we're not doing now, but if we ever can do home visits again, that's when I was doing that, making my positive phone calls, writing my newsletters. I spent that day just working on all of my family engagement pieces. Thursday, I prepped all my resources for the next week. So then Friday, all I would have to do is deep clean my classroom and leave. So that was something that really helped me. And of course, you wouldn't have to follow that same schedule, but find a schedule that works for you and block off your days. And then, of course, things pop up, but really try to stick to it. I think it helps a ton. And then leave, set a time for yourself and leave. I set 5 p.m. for myself, and if it's not done, it's not done. It'll get done tomorrow and it'll be okay. So those are my main tips for surviving. It's a hard year. You'll get through it. My second year has been so much better than my first year. So I've been much happier. So just get through it. You'll be fine.
Louise, Katie, Morgan.
Yeah, I would just say to make sure you give yourself a lot of grace throughout this year. I don't know if mine was just, I am type A person, and honestly, when you're teaching, you can't be, because nothing is going to be as planned. So trying to let go of those expectations and like that you're putting on yourself, and just like, if you're not in a good mental space, your classroom isn't going to be either. So like, I'm a better teacher when I take care of myself. So just try your best to take care of yourself. It's going to be a rough year. So just make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and like, it's okay to cry. The next year, just know the next year will get better. I didn't believe it would, and it did for me. So taking care of yourself and just really setting those boundaries. So don't stay at school for 12 hours. And don't overwork yourself. So those are just the biggest things. Taking care of your mental health is so important during this year.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Jessica and Katie said. Like, less is more. My first year, I was actually opening a brand new school as well. And so we were all brand new. And I think our custodians kicked a lot of us out at 9, 10 o'clock at night, because it was basically like we were all creating everything from scratch. And that's just not healthy. However, it helped me find my people, and you need your people. You need to know who you can go to, who you can talk to. You are allowed that as well. Remember, through it all, you're human, and some days are really, really hard. And reflect on your practices and know why you got into the profession, why you want to be here. And you're never going to be ready. You're never ready for every day. You're never ready for every lesson. You're never ready. Like, this is year 10. I'm never ready. And you just have to accept it. And it's okay. And sometimes the best lessons are the ones where you're like, oh man, should have done this today. Right. And so you're never ready. You're never fully there. That's okay. Just less is more. Breathe and find your people.
I think for myself, what was helpful was just letting go of the things that I did not have control over. I think education is a field unlike any other, because it's the intersection of so many different other areas of our society. So economics and politics and education, they all intersect together. And so there are so many things that are outside of your control when it comes to the decisions in your building, the decisions that then trickle down to your classroom. So focusing on what you can control in your classroom will save you a lot of mental stress. I don't know why we have to use this one particular curriculum. We just do, and I'm going to make it as developmentally appropriate as I can for my students to meet their needs. Because you can burn out really quick If you go in wanting to know the answer for every single thing and every single decision, and I would say I am one of those rare type B teachers. And so I'm not hyper organized. I'm not, like a filer. I hate paperwork. If I can do it digitally, it is so much better for me. So a lot of my paperwork and things, I will scan and save it digitally if I have permission to do so. And I shred the paperwork because I can't stand it. And so if anybody needs any secondary advice or somebody to reach out to who's a type B person, I am more than happy to have my email shared, because if you're a type B person, we're kind of rare in teaching. So.
Any final questions in the last few minutes? Yeah, Katie.
I guess my biggest question, like as a person who struggles with mental health, like very, very much, what are like, we've kind of touched on this, but like, what are your biggest suggestions for taking care of your mental health? And then also, like, as much as we love teaching, there are days where we are just unmotivated. So what do we do to motivate ourselves?
So I'll answer about, because I struggled really bad with anxiety, especially the first year. Like I think that's why I would cry all the time, and it was just pretty bad. So that first year I journaled my feelings literally every night. I sat in my bed and just like journaled my feelings. And then I would write my gratitudes to help with my mental health. And then I also talked to people, because I felt so alone my first year, because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be in love with teaching. Like I see all my friends are having this amazing year, and I'm coming home and I'm crying every day. And I felt like such a failure. So like I can definitely speak to that part of it. So what I would do is I talk to people, and then I found someone, actually Claire, I don't know if you remember her, Holly, she was in our classes too. She was going through the exact same situation as me. And we talked every single night, and like, it's just good to know you're not alone in the struggle. And then I read books about mental health, I journal, and I would write my gratitudes to try to like ground myself and know that this too will pass, and I'm not alone. So like, if you ever wanted to reach out to me next year too, and you're struggling, you can, because I was that person who really was struggling with my mental health, and I felt so alone. But you just find people that are also struggling, and it's nice to know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
I think having a plan, I'm sorry. I think having a plan for yourself is really important. So for example, I had a friend who struggled with panic attacks. And she had a person who she had her phone on her during the school day, and she would text that person, or this particular person would say, hey, I'm going to check in with you every hour on the hour through a text. Just send me like a K or an X or something back to me. Now, I know that is, cell phones in the classroom. I know that administrators have a really big rule about that. But even if it's somebody in your building who can consistently, if you're neighbors or if you walk by each other in the hallway regularly, having a plan for someone to consistently check in with you is really beneficial for some. And then I think anything that you can do outside of school to de-stress is really going to help as well. And then don't be afraid to use your employee assistance program. Those are not very well used. And what it is typically if your school district has health insurance, you have access to an EAP, which is an employee assistance program. And what that does is it's like a nurse hotline or a counseling hotline that you can call, and depending.
We lost you, Morgan.
I can keep going. So you have the hotlines that you can call, and they have supports in place and counseling systems if you need it, and you get it included in your insurance. And all that. But I also want to say, my first year I cried a lot, but oh my gosh, I loved it. And I will never forget it. And I won't forget any of these years. And the other day I'm a big reflector, and that's probably my downfall, is that I reflect and I am so overly critical of myself. Like, oh my gosh, this could have done, I should have done this. Why didn't I say this in the moment? And I stop and I think, why am I here? Because of these kids, and what did we achieve today? And if I ask them how the day went, sometimes do that for yourself. Do a little check-in, like, hey guys, like, how did you think today went? Do a little 5 survey thing, or like, what do you think went really well? You're going to be so surprised, because the things that you're hardest on yourself, and those days when you just feel like falling apart, you're going to find something to celebrate. I give it a little example. I had a student last year who, my, oh my, if there was a kid who could make you cry every day, he was this child, right? And one day we had been just going at it, and we were trying, and I came home one night and I cried in the shower, and I was like, how will I do this? And I said, I've got to make a change, right? I'm the adult. There's something I can do differently. I can't come home like this. If I'm feeling like this, what is he feeling like? What are the other students in the class feeling like? So I had him on a one-on-one lunch bunch the next day, and we talked. The things I found out about this child and what was going on in their home, and why was he pushing me? Because he felt safest for me. He trusted me. He knew I was going to be there the next day, so he could come at me, and he knew that I was going to be there. And that's what he told me. He's like, I take it out on you, and I don't mean to, but I do. So even on those hardest days, think about that one kid, because I promise you, every single day, you're going to make a difference. And I know we didn't get it to it, Holly, but this is like with the interview question. And I've sat in many interviews. I'm on the leadership team at my school. And the biggest thing that I have to say when we interview people, what we're looking for is passion and care for students. You can be taught content, you can be taught curriculum, you can be taught programs. You can't be taught to care and love children like you do. And there's a reason why you're here. There's a reason why you're going through this program. Make sure that comes off in your interview. Give those personal connection stories. Mention those children that helped you and made you change, and eye-opening, whatever it is, because realistically, even on those hardest days, they're hard for a reason. A child was pushing you, something happened, something didn't go right, but I bet you make a difference in somebody's life. And if you remember and write down, I wish I journaled from the beginning of just writing down like funny things a kid said each day, or like the things that made me cry out of happiness, because there have been times, top 5th grade last year, they like came to me one day with this like poster they'd drawn with all this stuff, and I literally burst into tears, and they were like, we made her so sad. And then my whole class was crying. All the girls started crying. And I was like, no, this is like happy tears, right? Because that's the thing. We're not always crying because we did a bad job. We're crying because we care and we want to do more. And we feel like, what can we do to do more? And so recognize the small things that you've done, celebrate those with yourself and with someone else as well, and be kind to yourselves. Be really kind to yourselves, because you're in a profession where you won't hear that very often. So if you're not saying it to yourself, you're really going to hear it very little. So just be really kind to yourselves.
I'm being mindful of our time, and we're 1 minute over 7. And I was hoping we would wrap things up in an hour, but that was impossible because you all exceeded my expectations for this panel. And I have to tell everybody, I reached out on Facebook to former students, and 25 students said they wanted to talk to you all tonight. That's how many I heard from. So some folks are going to come in the spring, but not everybody will be able to join. So there's a lot of wisdom out there, and they want to give back, and they want to share with you. I just want to thank you all, Louise and Jessica, Morgan and Katie. I'm going to reach out to you with an email because we have some swag to send to you. And if it is okay, if I can share your emails, if you don't mind doing that, I'll do that with the group. But thank you all so much. We'll let everybody get on with their evenings, It's been great. And this is recorded, so hey, you can watch it again if you want. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye,
Thank
Holly.
you.
I
Bye,
hope you're
Maria.
well.
Sorry about your internet.
I'm sorry about my internet. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It all worked out. People jumped in when like Louise took over when your microphone went out at one point, and it was
Cool.
fine. I think everybody was so.
Louise is incredible, by the way. Did she go through the program? She's incredible.
She went through the 5-year program, and she traveled with me to Italy in 2010 in the study abroad trip.
Yeah.
Honestly, I haven't talked to her since.
Wow.
And she jumped at the chance to do this. So I'm just really, she's got a lot of passion. So.
Well, I'm sorry my internet was so bad we didn't get to interviews, but I'm happy to help with anything that you need.
Oh, and the other thing is the last seminar, we're going to be discussing interviewing with someone from career and academic planning. So it'll be a different perspective.
Of course.
And, if you have any thoughts you want to share about that, you can always either.
Yeah, I typed up some things, so I'll send that out to you.
Okay, and I'll share that with them at the last
with some
seminar.
questions. So, but if you also identify any type B people in your class, feel free to send them my personal email.
Okay.
That was really a struggle for me in teaching, was to find people who were like me, because I'm not very organized and I'm not like
and when Jessica was
talking
about when Jessica was sharing hers, whew, man, and that's how she was as a student too, you know, and not everybody's like that. So it's good to have both ends of the spectrum.
So, all right. Well, I hope you're well, and I hope you're staying safe and healthy.
Me too, for you.
Thank you.
And Justin and your dogs.
Oh, I'm sorry they made an appearance, but
oh no, we love dogs on Zoom meetings. All right.
Holly, have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.